I'm Mick O'Reilly, and I think the bailout for Greece was a bad idea. You don't give a crack addict more crack to cure him.
I'm Francis Matthew, and I think that the Greek deal was essential for the future of the Eurozone and consequently for Europe itself.
Francis, was the third bailout good or bad?
The deal was necessary. It was essential for the Euro that they made a deal. It was essential for Greece that they got a deal, both short term, so that they had cash in the banks, and long term, so they can start to survive again.
I don't necessarily agree that a deal is a good deal. I think that the third deal is actually a bad deal and it should never have been done. I don't think that Greece has proven itself capable of paying back any money so far in the two bailouts that it has received, and that it does nothing to advance the cause of the euro.
The Euro is in danger if a country is allowed to escape, is allowed to leave, as the German finance minister rather shamefully suggested in the very last round. There was no plan at all for a Grexit. They were not ready for any other currency. So the proposal that Europeans should simply dump a country into the outer darkness is shameful.
But the cost of a Grexit had been factored into international markets for the last 2 years. Everybody was expecting it to come to this. The contingency plans weren't in place, but they could have been put in place quite easily. It's better to have no deal than simply a bad deal and pour more debt onto Greek taxpayers.
The deal went a long way to saving the euro. It's necessary to have a currency of all countries combined in that project to keep the European project on the go. We miss the point if we focus simply on the simplistic mathematics of money into Greece, money back again. The main point of the saving of the euro was that it should also rebuild the European economy and recreate a competitive Europe, which it is now not.
This deal hasn't done that. All it's done is place a very high tax burden and debt burden on the Greek economy. The GDP to debt ratio is now at 200%, which is untenable. It simply put off a crisis for down the road. It hasn't solved anything.
No, if there's a problem with the deal, it's not that it was done. The problem is it wasn't generous enough.
So what you're saying is that a bad deal is better than no deal at all?
Because it's an essential first step towards the next deal. This deal only addresses 86 billion, which is going to Greece. The other 200 billion is waiting there to be repaid after 2020 with the IMF, and that could easily be delayed. The problem is not the numbers. The numbers can be made to add up. The problem is the political will to get Europeans, some of whom want austerity as the sole way to reflate their economy, and some of them who want easy money to reflate their economy.
The fact of the matter is that it is all about the numbers. They've received 90 billion, then 240 billion, and now another 86 billion. They haven't taken the measures necessary to pay back those monies. They haven't shown themselves worthy creditors. You don't give a crack addict more crack and hope that it cures him.
You've got Prime Minister Tsipras, who's a socialist, now going in to enforce these monetary policies on Greece, which does need structural reform. It does need to get less generous pensions. It does need to collect more tax. That is definite, and this is what Tsipras has said he would do. But this is not the way to simply add up the money and say, deal done, Greece is safe. Greece needs more credit to get itself out. The cure should not kill the patient.
Yes, but all of those measures, like tax reforms, pension reforms, state savings, were all supposed to be done as part of the first bailout for 90 billion. Okay? Ireland, when it entered the bailout, got 90 billion in funds from Europe to bail out its banks. It cut its social programs, it raised its taxes, it cut its spending. Greece has simply failed to do that.
In 2011, when the financial crisis hit the euro, with its completely inadequate political management, the Europeans ran around frantically trying to find an answer. They found it through austerity and applied it to their 4 countries who needed it. Ireland was one. And that was the answer in 2011. In 2015, the problem is different, the answer is different. It's not about getting money back, it's about reflating the economy and creating a Europe which is a more level playing field.
The problem with this bailout is that it's actually given fuel, it's added fuel to the fire for those who want to leave Europe, like Britain. It says that it can't operate within these constraints.
No, it's got nothing to do with Britain. Britain is not a member of the Eurozone. This is a deal about the Eurozone. The Eurozone needed to rescue itself, and this deal is one of the ongoing process of how the Eurozone will continue to shape it. Where the Eurozone now needs to go is to find a strong Europe, a strong Euro. They need to find a way in which they have better central bank, a stronger European central bank, and they need much more economic convergence.
But you're not building a stronger Europe by having it based on bailouts for countries that simply don't pay it back. When you walk down the streets of any Greek village and you see homes that are halfway under construction, that's not work in progress. That's simply stopped for tax purposes so they won't have to pay income taxes or property taxes. Who's paying those taxes to keep that town running? The Germans and the Finns.
The Germans have done well out of the euro. They are well ahead. Their currency, if there was to be a Deutschmark, would be about 30% more expensive. Unemployment in Germany is running about 6%. Unemployment in the rest of the Eurozone is around 13%. So Germany is doing very well. The problem which is facing Europe and the Eurozone is how to equalize those members of that currency and have similar fiscal and monetary policies.
The fundamental issue is that when Greece joined the euro in 2001, for 7 years its GDP tripled from 10,000 euros per person to 30,000 euros per person. At the same time, it funded an Olympics and it simply spent money like drunken sailors and has done nothing since to pay it back. That's the fundamental issue.
No, it has paid back some, it has failed to pay back rest, and like many fringe countries in the European project, it's done very well out of the European system.
Francis, lend me 20 dirhams and I'll pay it back to you. Better still, lend me another 40 and I might pay it back to you. No, better still, lend me another 100 and I'll see about if I can pay it back. And if I can't?
We're not talking about personal, we're not talking about handbags, we're not talking about purses, we're talking about a country which will continue. We're talking about millions of people living in a country who need an economy which will work. To achieve that, Europe needs to commit to Greece, Greece needs to commit to Europe, and that is what this deal did. Looking ahead, this is only a start. It's not an end, it's not a beginning. It's a process which will now go on. Almost certainly Greece will have to go back and renegotiate to have a larger debt holiday. It'll probably do so with more effect if and when Cyprus comes back to the Europeans and the IMF, proving that he can manage his country better than the previous governments.
No Greek leader has gone back to the IMF to be able to show that he's been able to handle his economy. Looking over the last 3 bailouts, nothing is going to change. If anything, all this has done is to simply put the crisis further down the road when the cost of a Brexit had already been factored into the markets. It simply spread more uncertainty.
The cost of the Brexit was factored into the financial markets. It was not factored into the Greek people. It was not factored onto the effects of having a large part of Europe suddenly being kicked out into a no zone. That what happened was that both Greece and Germany, from their very different political perspectives, came together and said we can make an agreement. They had the support of many other Europeans who hate the austerity being imposed by Merkel and her German view that is the sole solution to rebuild European competitiveness.
But in the Irish case, austerity worked. It's back on the bond market. Its employment rate has fallen. Its exports are booming. Austerity worked.
And there's a problem in Spain, which is a much bigger country and more significant than Ireland. There's a problem in Italy, and there's a problem in Portugal. And the danger of having no deal would have been that any of those countries could have been picked off by the markets in a future downturn. This deal meant that the euro stays a euro.
There's a difference between staying a member of the euro and staying a member of the European Union. There's a place for Greece within the European Union. There's not a place for Greece within the euro.
The leaders of the Eurozone disagree with you. They've just made a deal to keep Greece in the Eurozone and find a way forward together. We haven't come to any agreement today, but if you'd like to know more about what we've said, go to the Views section of Gulf News, in print and in gulfnews.com.